Mike Grier had his availability with the media and gave us a couple little tidbits for free agency and the draft and some more. So we'll get caught up on that today.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Western Conference Tuesday on the Locked On NHL channel. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch this on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be reacting to some of to Mike Grier's press availability. He spent about 45 minutes taking questions from the media, where we covered a whole range of things, including the draft. We also talked about free agency, what some of his plans are for there, and got caught up on some other kind of news and notes and expectations for guys who will or won't be here next season. So let's start with the draft, because that is the most pressing issue. And I have cut some clips from the free agency. All these clips are via the San Jose Sharks. So thank you to the Sharks for sending out the availability. But so what we'll do here in a second is we'll talk about, I'll kind of play the clip and I'll give my thoughts and reactions on kind of what Grier was saying. So before we get to all that, though, do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So let's get started with Mike Grier. And Mike Grier was asked, well, we know Macklin Celebrini. He didn't say Celebrini's name in this, but we know Mike's been talking about Celebrini for a while. Actually, he was asked about Celebrini, but at some point. But we all know it's Macklin Celebrini. Everybody in the world knows it's Macklin Celebrini. But of course, for Sharks and Sharks fans, all the intrigue starts at 14. So when Mike Grier was asked, well, what's the plan at number 14? Or we know, of course, the Sharks do need kind of a blue chip defensive prospect, or are you going to be best player available, or what are you kind of planning on doing? So here is what Mike Grier was asked with the 14th pick, what they aim to do.
I think for the most part, we'll probably be best player available then. Where we are at 14, we'll see how our board shapes up here after we get to Vegas and have our final meetings and shape everything up and see how things look and line up. But most likely at 14, we'll still be at best player available.
And that's the right move. At 14, there's still premier talent left on the board, whether it is a forward or a defenseman. I know a lot of Sharks fans are like, just pick the best defenseman. But if there's a forward who slides, in Beckett Seneca, whatever you think on Cole Yzerman, I think for the Sharks, you have to go best player. You have to continue picking best player available, because yes, while we feel really good about especially the forward depth, guys don't pan out. You have to give yourself some insulation. And when you're picking a lottery pick, I think the best strategy is to go best player available, because it just gives you more flexibility down the line. It's not like you can't trade somebody. You never know who's going to become available via a trade. And with all the assets and the war chests of picks / prospects the Sharks have, if a young, awesome defenseman becomes available, Mike Grier is going to be able to strike, whether it's moving prospects and or picks, to get that. Your roster building through the draft is one way to build your roster, but there's a lot of pieces to it. And I think continuing to just pick best player available, regardless, the Sharks have plenty of needs. Okay. So whether it's a defenseman or a forward, or just continue to pick the best player available, especially while you're picking lottery picks here. If you're in the back of the first, that's a different conversation. You may be swinging for upside. Maybe you try to kind of fill hole. There's a little bit different strategy. But when you're picking top 15, you always pick best player available, and you figure it out later on, because guys don't pan out. Guys will maybe what you think are holes now in 5 years may not be holes when these guys are starting to kind of make a real impact. So Grier was also asked on if the Sharks will move up at 14, and here's what he said.
Yeah, I mean, it's never, it's always hard to move up. But, I think we'll explore both options. Really, we'll explore moving up, trying to move up, if the price isn't too high. And then, we're also open to trading back and getting more assets, and if that made sense too. So we're kind of open-minded at 14. I think it's kind of a draft this year that's kind of all over the map. I don't think anyone's really sure how it's going to go. Obviously if there's a player there that we really like, at 14, we'll take them, and maybe if there's a player that's sliding down the board, maybe we'll try and move up and try and get them. Or, if we feel like there's a big pocket of players that we like, maybe we'll slide down and get some more assets. So, we're open-minded to the whole scenario, to all the different scenarios, and kind of looking forward to seeing how things shake out.
Mike Grier, just like me, looking forward to seeing how things shake out. But I think for these Sharks, right, they're not just going to move up just to move up. If they feel like somebody is there that can be kind of a franchise changing type of player, whether that's, I know myself and a lot of Sharks fans are very much on the Zeev Buium, like just ready to give it all up for Zeev Buium. There's that. But we don't know how this thing's going to kind of shake out for the Sharks. And maybe they feel like there could be, one of the top 6 defensemen slides, or maybe they don't like any of the top 6 defensemen, or there's just so many variables to how this thing plays out. And, I think where the Sharks are at, I can see trading down, but I think you need to just get blue chip assets. And especially since you have 2 picks in the top, 12 or top 10 picks of the second round, while getting some more assets would be nice. I think you need to you just need to get good players from the Sharks. So point of view. And I think there's going to be a pocket of defensemen. If you do go forward, there's going to be a pocket of defensemen either in the late first, where I think it's easier to move back into the first round, especially with what the Sharks have at their disposal, than it is, I think, to move up into the top 10. And we don't really see top moves up into the top 10 very often. So we'll see what happens there for the Sharks if they are able to move up, but wouldn't hold your breath. So I asked Mike Grier on trying to find a goalie in the draft, and he gave me a really good answer.
I would say, we were definitely hoping to add one last year, and a couple guys kind of got snaked right before our pick. So, this year I think it is something, we'll definitely try and add a goalie at some point in the draft.
So yeah, the Sharks, I asked him the same question last year. Are you going to try to draft a goalie? He wanted to draft a goalie. Remember, there was a huge run of goalies at the end of the second, beginning of the third, and they kind of missed out on that run there. I wouldn't be surprised if the Sharks are one of the first teams to pick a goalie. And whether that's at 42, and especially if that's your 4th pick, or maybe you move down, or maybe you try to move back up into the beginning of the 3rd round. The Sharks have a lot of picks and a lot of flexibility where if they want to move things around, like they're able to do that. And don't get caught up on kind of trading future picks for the Sharks, because they're going to still be acquiring picks over the next couple of years, right? Like there's still going to be sellers at the trade deadline, whether it's a guy like Granlund or Vitek Vanacek or Mackenzie Blackwood or one of their defense. Like there's ways to manufacture draft picks, and I wouldn't get caught up on, because draft picks get moved around like crazy during draft day, and then they spend the rest of the year hoarding them like acorns. So don't get caught up on like, oh man, he traded a future 4th round pick or something like that to move up. Like those picks are easy for GMs, especially a GM like Mike Grier, who has you're still in kind of selling mode, right? Those picks are easy to replace for the Sharks at some point. So, but yeah, I think for the draft, for what we've kind of learned from Mike Grier is we know it's going to be Celebrini. They're going to pick the best player available, whoever they think the best player available is. And their list is going to be very different from the public's list, right? And, like Grier seems he's going to work or move around the board. And we've seen him do that in the past couple of both his drafts of him kind of working the board, moving up, moving down, whatever, it kind of plays out for him. So, and hopefully they continue to add goalies as the Sharks look for the goalie of the future. So we'll get into Grier's conversation on free agents and kind of what he needs to do, kind of what they're looking to do and kind of how much they're willing to spend and all that fun stuff. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But with the playoffs winding down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. They got something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right. So let's talk about some of his free agency, discussions and kind of what the Sharks doing. Grier was pretty honest about you heard a lot of compete and toughness. He talked about Barclay Goodrow and why they did that and, kind of wanting to add some of that compete and toughness. But he also kind of mentioned what some of their free agent shopping list looks like for the first. So we'll start with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned a little bit. We saw got to keep looking to add some character and compete to the group. We do need some scoring on the wings, most likely, and maybe some center help to take some pressure off of Granny and Will and stuff like that. So we want to be flexible. I think we're in a good spot where some of our centers have the capability to play wing too and move up and down the lineup. So a little bit of scoring and some compete as well.
So yes, the compete and stuff, and he's always that's been kind of his thing, right? Playing in your face hockey. But mentioning Will Smith as a center, one thing, right? He's not going to mention Celebrini because Celebrini is not here yet. But the expectation is Celebrini is going to be here and playing center. So yes, I could see with that. And I think though, having some center depth, especially for Logan Couture, and we'll get to Couture here in a little bit, having that backup plan, that insurance for Couture if he is not able to go. But scoring on the wings is something that we have talked about, especially if you're going to have Celebrini and Smith here, you need to have some veteran guys who can play on their wings or maybe slide to center. And I think that is going to be something that the Sharks are going to look at. That is the best way to support your young players is by putting them with other good players. And I think that's where the Sharks are going to be kind of looking to do. Maybe not top shelf stuff, but finding some quality NHL players who just kind of raise the floor for everybody here with that. And so Grier was asked also kind of what type of contracts are they going to be kind of dishing out these long-term contracts. And he put the kind of the kibosh on that. So.
Right. I don't think we're at that point in time where we're ready to do that. I think we'll still be interested in some players in free agency, but hopefully we'll probably be in the 1 4-year range if we do get into some term. I'd like not to go over 4 years with anyone, but you never know when July 1 comes around, but that would be the plan, kind of more shorter term stuff,
which again makes sense if you look at the Sharks, kind of their future is Ekland's going to, as weird as it sounds, right? Ekland's going to need a new deal in 2 years. And yes, I know the Mark-Edward Vlasic money comes off the books then, but if Celebrini and Smith are the players you think they are, they're going to need new deals in 3 seasons. And it'll be very interesting to see. I think one of the big things will be how Mike Grier treats these type of guys. If you do the bridge thing, like the Doug Wilson thing, where you kind of keep kicking the can down, or do you go the route of like guys like Cale Makar who get kind of the big deals, or like the way the Sens have kind of done, where they get big deals betting on these guys to continue to get better and better. And that, I think it's going to be a big thing for Grier as some of these guys mature. I expect if Celebrini is even half as good as what we expect him to be, he's going to be like an 8 by whatever person, right? But if Will Smith and Ekland and some of these guys, are they going to play the bridge game with them, or are they going to just kind of pay them and kind of try to hold them through their prime? So it's going to be one of the really intriguing things with how they work out the contracts. But, Grier trying to find some of these guys who can kind of help bridge, when talent-wise, bridge the gap while you're waiting for your Smiths, your Musties, your Haltonens, all these other guys to kind of get ready to make their impact. So, I fully expect. I wouldn't be surprised if he's willing to go. And he kind of mentioned it too, like especially living in California and the Sharks being bad, you might have to pay a little bit more salary-wise to get these guys to come here. But I think he's really trying to kind of keep the term below that 4 years and give himself some roster flexibility as young players start to make their impact. So I wouldn't be surprised, again, if he's willing to pay a little bit more, but try to keep the term a little bit lower here. So, and then I asked him about the blue line and trying to add a piece to that. So, and here's what Mike Grier said on getting a puck moving defenseman on the blue line.
Yeah, no, I think we'd like, if possible, we would like to add a puck mover back there. Help us get out of our end a little cleaner, help run the power play. As you know, there's too many times last year we had to go with the 5 forward look. So, hopefully we'll be able to add someone who can move a puck a little bit cleaner and run a power play.
Which is, again, we kind of, some of the guys they've been linked to, like a guy like Sean Walker. I said like an Alexander Carrier, which is a guy I would be really interested to try to sign if I was the Sharks, if I was Mike Grier. Also like the very much thing, but like Mike Grier is going to open the pocketbook a little bit, and he needs to add a puck moving defenseman. And we'll talk some odds and ends and some of the players who probably aren't going to be here next year in a little bit. But right, I mean, we all watched the Sharks last year. Like, how many times did the Sharks just struggle to get the puck out of their own zone? Well, nobody that they are going to get is going to be Erik Karlsson or anything like that. And I know a lot of people love their defensive defenseman, but you need someone who can start the transition. That's where the Sharks struggled. That was, I think, the one area where the Sharks struggled with so much last year was just getting the puck going in the other direction. And they're going to have some new pieces, right? And we'll get to kind of some of the new things, but I would not be surprised if that is like one of the first moves the Sharks do is, getting a scoring winger, like a legitimate scoring winger, and then getting a puck moving defenseman, a guy who can get the puck going the other way and really help out this young defense core, right? Some of the players are going to be back, and to help the young forwards, so they're not having to spend 20 minutes a night in their own zone that we kind of saw last year. It's just them spending so much time in their own zone and try to get a cleaner game and just get the puck going at a better rate. So we'll talk about some of the kind of odds and ends. We'll talk, so Grier gave us an update on Logan Couture. He also gave us an update on Shakir Mukhamadullin, kind of the expectations for Shakir Mukhamadullin. We'll talk about some of the guys who we kind of talked about, the RFAs and UFAs and all that. So we'll get to that here in just 1 minute. All right. We'll talk about the RFAs and UFAs. I didn't clip this part because it was kind of a lot of different questions, but basically, the big news out of today was Kalen Addison will not be getting a qualifying offer. This is something I brought up a little while ago, like just the numbers game, and I don't think Addison kind of made the most of his opportunity with the Sharks. Right, he got a lot of power play time and those opportunities, but Kalen Addison is not going to be getting a qualifying offer with the Sharks. Defenseman Ty Emberson will be, and Emberson was great last year. His only knock was he just wasn't healthy all season, and but I really liked what I saw out of Ty Emberson, right-handed defenseman, showed, especially defensively, real knack defensively, and we know the Sharks need some help on the right side. Would not be surprised though if, like, a guy we'll talk about here in a minute, and Shakir Mukhamadullin, like Ty Emerson feels like a perfect partner for Shakir Mukhamadullin. Mukhamadullin, who is a little bit more offensive leaning of the two, but I think Ty Emerson could be a really solid, just kind of steady partner for him. And yeah, I'm really happy to hear that Emberson's going to be getting a qualifying offer. He did also mention that Zadina and Luke Cunningham are both kind of in the mix to come back. He did say basically all the UFAs. They mentioned like Bailey and Cooley as potential guys to come back, but he expects them all to go to free agency. So it's probably going to be like second wave of free agency type of thing, where maybe they're out there for a couple of days. He can kind of give them a low, kind of a vetman type of contract and say like, hey, if you want to come back and compete, maybe you don't have any offers out there, we're more than happy to have you back. And I think a guy like Bailey, who played really well with the Sharks, but he was supposed to be a big piece for the Barracuda. And I wouldn't mind having him back kind of in that same role where playing on the Barracuda, and if you need him to kind of come up to take the place in bottom 6 minutes, totally fine by me. So with Shakir Mukhamadullin, I asked kind of what's the how Mukhamadulin's doing and kind of the expectations for him, and here's what Mike Grier had to say about that. So
Shaq's healthy. He's back home. I'm not sure when he's coming back. If he's maybe August coming back, but he's healthy, working out, training well. He won't be at Dev Camp. So we'll see him when he gets back here in August sometime. And I think we have high hopes for him, but at the same time, like all the other young players, he's gonna have to earn his way up. And if he has a good camp and he's ready, then great for us. But if he needs more time in the American League, then that's fine with us as well. So it's on the player, but we're really excited for him.
So yeah, that's got to be kind of the answer I expected for him. But the way if Mukhamadullin hits the ground running and the way he was playing before he got hurt, and even in his short time in the NHL, I think he's an NHL player. I talked about it yesterday on when I kind of did my rankings of the Sharks prospects, and I have him third in the prospect pool. Like I think he's at that stage now where he needs to be playing NHL games, and if he doesn't make the team out of camp, like, don't panic. I had somebody ask me, "Are we worried about Mukhamadulin's development?" It's like he's played one season in North America, and he was an AHL All-Star. Like Mukhamadulin's fine; he's well on his way. Like the further you are away from center ice, the more time it takes you to develop, right? Forwards, you there's a little bit more leeway with their defensively. Defensemen, right? You have to really get the nuance of playing defense down. And I think there's some room to grow there for Mukhamadullin, but I really think his defense has really grown a lot in the past, especially compared to when he first got here to now, or before his injury. And then goalies, of course, take a long time because there's just so much technically that goes into playing a goalie, and just the reps that are needed to kind of become a master at that. But no, don't worry about Mukhamadullin. And I think he's as it depending on what the Sharks do here in free agency, but like it's hard for me to not think of Mukhamadullin as one of the 6 best defensemen potentially on the Sharks roster. So I expect him to be there at least until the end, and then maybe he starts the season with the Barracuda, but he's going to be playing NHL games next year. And he's going to probably get a really good look at some point next year too. So if he doesn't make the roster right out of camp, but I kind of think he does, to be honest. So even though I know this team's going to be super young, but it's better just to have all these kids kind of learn together, right? And Mukhamadullin, I thought, really, really played well on the Barracuda team that was very up and down last year. I thought he was kind of one of their steadiest players. Definitely had his ups and downs, of course, but night in, night out, I thought he was usually one of their best players, kind of watching them all season long. So, and then finally here, we're going to talk about the captain, Logan Couture, asked about kind of where he's at and what the expectation is for Couture kind of going into the offseason and into training camp.
Yeah, I talked to Cooch last week. He's working out hard. I think he feels pretty good. So, and I think he's optimistic about everything. So we'll just see how the rest of the summer goes, how he keeps training, and he'll be back here in July sometime to start skating, and we'll just kind of take it from there. But right now, I think he's enjoying being with his family and being with his young son, and training and trying to get healthy. So I think he's feeling good. We'll just have to see how it goes once we get into the later months of summer.
So I think kind of going from there, they're hoping that he's okay, but I think Grier's planning on if he's not available. And that's I did a whole podcast on potential Couture insurance players. And I think that's the way Grier needs to go with this, and especially if you go back to the earlier clip on kind of their needs, finding a guy who can play center or play wing if they need to, or kind of feeling like that. And especially if you have Couture, Granlund, Smith, Celebrini in your there, including, and then Nico Sturm and kind of some of the other guys there. But having some insurance for Couture isn't the worst thing in the world. And, you kind of hope for the best, plan for the worst in this kind of thing. And I think that's the way Grier's going here. Is you hope Couture can kind of recover enough to be an impact player still. Because when in the 6 games he was here, he made an impact. Maybe, I know he only had 1 point, but just the way the guys rallied around him, the Sharks played a better brand of hockey with Logan Couture on the ice. And that is kind of baby steps here, right? Is we want better hockey this year. Just one, to watch more, and I think 2, just again with all the young players on this team to kind of start to kind of build those expectations and what the Sharks want to start to become. So that's going to be it for me today. So we had plenty of Mike Grier reaction stuff. Again, thank you to the Sharks for sending out all the clips, or sending out the big clip, and was able to kind of cut those up. So I thought Grier was great. Very typical Grier, a little bit of the snark to him on some of the questions, but overall, gave us a little bit of breadcrumbs there. So that's going to be it for me today. We'll be back tomorrow. The Bob Father is going to put out his list. So we'll kind of break that down, look at potential options for the Sharks at 14, look at who's going to be potentially there for the Sharks at 33, all of that fun stuff. So make sure you guys are following along for that. Then we'll look at some mock drafts, and later this week, looking at mock drafts to see who's available for the Sharks, kind of where other people have the Sharks picking at 14 and potentially available at 33. And then I will, on draft day, release my kind of guys I'm banging the table for at 14. Last year, 2 years ago, I did a whole episode on like why the Sharks need to draft Brad Lambert. I still feel right about my Brad Lambert love, but I'll do kind of my 3 guys who I'm like banging the table. These, if they're available at 14, these are one you need to draft one of these 3 guys. So, and then of course, draft coverage from Vegas. So I'll get you guys cover that. So plenty of content coming this week, and then we'll get you guys ready. We'll have free agency stuff the follow on Monday as well. So make sure you follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Especially on Instagram, I'm going to be posting kind of behind the scenes stuff on the Locked On Instagram. So stuff from Vegas as well. So all that good stuff. Follow me on Twitter at MyFryHole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.